This week on Aussie Jetstar, we're flying on a blast from the past on QantasLink, or perhaps an experience still so commonly found on Jetstar today. We're not flying on Qantas mainline stalwart old Boeing 737 aircraft, but we're flying on one of the airline's arguably least comfortable aircraft. So we're flying on one of its just 17 Western Australia based Airbus A320 aircraft, which are hand-me-down aircraft of Australia's most prolific budget low-cost carrier, Jetstar, which were renowned for their horrible legroom and lack of much in the way of modern amenities. But does flying on an ex-Jetstar Airbus A320 really equate to a subpar Qantas experience in 2025, compared to what you may have typically become more accustomed to flying on the airline's large fleet of stalwart 737 aircraft? To answer that question, come and join me as we fly on one of QantasLink's longest interstate routes, some 2 hours between Port Hedland and Perth, to get to see really what the onboard experience is actually like in terms of in-flight service and hard product combined, and whether it's really objectively that much different or even worse, a burden to the overall QantasLink experience in 2025.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Port Hedland, the second largest town in West Australia's stunning Pilbara region. Port Hedland and its accompanying satellite town of South Hedland has a population of around about 18,000 people. The whole pretty well modern day entire existence of the town all surrounds the absolutely massive port of Port Hedland that you can see behind me. You may be surprised to know, but the port of Port Hedland holds a number of claims to fame. It is actually the largest bulk export port in the whole world. It is also the largest tonnage export port in the whole of Australia. To put things in perspective, the port of Port Hedland, according to the latest reporting period, exported over 500 million tonnes of cargo. It really comes down to Port Hedland's strategic location. The whole town is very much based around mining. So the port of Port Hedland obviously facilitates the export of predominantly West Australian iron ore from the Pilbara region, but also many other West Australian commodities that you'll find here in our booming resources sector. Anyway, if you want to see and hear a bit more about Port Hedland, be sure to check out the walking tour that I did yesterday, where you can see why Port Hedland really is based all around mining and its port. Anyway, we've had a great couple of days here over the Easter long weekend here up in Port Hedland. We actually flew in a couple of days ago on Virgin Australia on their Boeing 737-700 aircraft. That was an ex-KLM Royal Dutch aircraft. Really good, pleasant flight overall. But yeah, this afternoon, a bit later today, we're going to be heading to the Port Hedland airport and we're going to be flying back to Perth. We're going to be flying on QantasLink, on one of their hand-me-down ex-Jetstar Airbus A320 aircraft. So here in West Australia for interstate travel really is a bit of a mixed bag of the different aircraft types that you can fly. On the one hand, there is some really cool opportunities to fly on aircraft such as the Fokker 100 and the Airbus A319 that you'll rarely get the chance to fly commercially outside of the state. On the flip side, however, we are also left with hand-me-down Airbus A320 aircraft. Virgin Australia Regional Airline operate ex-Tiger aircraft here in WA, and of course QantasLink have a fairly large fleet of ex-Jetstar A320 aircraft. Have flown and reviewed both these aircraft types several times before, and they are known certainly for their very tight legroom from their former budget carrier past. That being said, most experiences I've had on these aircraft, especially the QantasLink Airbus A320s, have always been very comfortable flights. Not only have they usually been quite empty, meaning I get a row to myself, the service is really good on interstate services. So that usually makes up for the poor legroom on these aircraft. So it is a 2 hour and 20-minute flight back to Perth, reasonably lengthy WA interstate flight. It is an evening flight, a sunset flight actually, leaving at 5 o'clock. So yeah, hopefully should be a pretty good QantasLink service on board. This stage, according to the seat map, I've got the whole row to myself, so fingers crossed that stays the same. So without further ado, let's now head to the Port Hedland International Airport, get checked in, and come and join me as we head to Perth tonight. Should be a good experience. Let's do it.
Before we head over to the airport, let's have a look at the route information for flight QF1467 down to Perth this evening. Great circle distance on this one is 1,308 kilometres with a gazetted flight time of 2 hours and 20 minutes. gonna level off at 36,000 feet, completing the flight in just 1 hour and 54 minutes. And just like that, welcome to Port Hedland International Airport, which you'll find located approximately 9.3 kilometers southeast of the town centre, also about 11 kilometers from the nearby satellite town of South Hedland. The airport up here at Port Hedland is actually one of the busiest regional airports in Western Australia. The other notable airports being Broome, Karratha, Newman and Kalgoorlie-Boulder. Despite the population of Port Hedland only being about 15,000 people, quite impressively this airport services shy under 500,000 yearly annual passengers. To put things in perspective, that is about 30 times the population of Port Hedland itself. Another way to look at it is literally every resident of Port Hedland is serviced by about 30 flights per year from this airport, which is quite a staggering statistic. Obviously, statistics alone don't tell the full story of why it's such a busy airport up here at Port Hedland and elsewhere at other Pilbara airports. You only got to look at all these massive car parks full of rental cars and mining vehicles to understand just how much mining and FIFO traffic really fuels aviation up here in Australia's northwest. From here at Port Hedland, both mainline and regional Virgin Australia and Qantas provide frequent services to Perth, as do Alliance Airlines, whilst Nexus provides direct connections to Karratha and Broome as a part of their wider Perth to Broome milk run. If you're wondering where the International is in Port Hedland International Airport, well, this airport in the decade prior to the pandemic did have a history of infrequent but nonetheless regularly scheduled flights to Bali, courtesy of then SkyWest and then Virgin Australia Regional. Anyway, on to check-in, rather quiet on this Easter Sunday. That didn't actually open until about an hour and a half before, so about 15 minutes after I arrived. Check-in all done the old-fashioned way here at Port Hedland. I think it was handled by an external provider, but nonetheless it was very quick and efficient. Only took a few minutes. What was rather not so efficient and certainly not the most professional was the security checkpoint. Was even open despite almost everyone already checked in. It's almost like the staff were running late to their shift. Everyone was left waiting around at the arrival baggage belt. So a little bit frustrating when you get to the airport early and you complete check-in and bag drop, only to be waiting around about half an hour with all other passengers for security to open. I totally get it, I don't expect security to open several hours before when it's the first flight of the day, but yeah, half an hour before, you can certainly do better than that. Anyway, while we wait for security staff to finally rock up, let's have a look at our inbound aircraft arriving from Perth this afternoon. Today we're flying on Victor Hotel, Victor Quebec Romeo. Nearing on 20 years of age at time of flight, this aircraft has a pretty straightforward history, having operated commercially solely for the Qantas Group. It was first delivered to Jetstar Airways in September 2005, so very much a Jetstar original aircraft this one. It was then taken up by QantasLink's Western Australia based subsidiary Network Aviation in July of 2023. For your information, the A320 very much is the most predominant aircraft type in the Network Aviation fleet here in West Australia. QantasLink have a total of 17. We have further 2 expected to soon be delivered for the airline as a result of the closure of Jetstar Asia up in Singapore. Rounding off Network's fleet here in West Australia are a total of 9 Airbus A319s, which were sourced from Spirit Airlines in the United States. That is not to forget the traditional backbone of QantasLink's fleet here in West Australia is the airline's 14 mighty Fokker 100 aircraft, which are soon to be replaced by an order for up to 14 mid-life Embraer E190 aircraft, with Qantas yet to confirm its sourcing arrangement. Anyway, it's going to be a very quick visit for this aircraft up here in Port Hedland today. Only about a half an hour or so turnaround time before it heads back to Perth. But it's only going to be about 15 minutes until boarding is called, and security is only just about to open. So good to see people finally trickling into what looks like quite a nice departure lounge. Quite a pity, by the time security is finally open, it is now quite a long line. And to be honest, it took about 15-20 minutes to get through. So now we're through, boarding is literally already being called. So quite a frustrating experience here at Port Hedland today. I was here with plenty of time to spare, about an hour and 45 minutes before, all checked in and bags dropped. Yeah, we still had to rush through security at the last minute, had no time to spare. And just like that, welcome aboard our former Jetstar Airbus A320. Total 180 seats on board this aircraft in a standard 3-3 all economy class configuration. Once seated, you'll notice nothing's really changed since the days of Jetstar with this aircraft. Very much standard black Jetstar leather seating, with a seat back, fold back tray table that also extends. There's also a storage cubby which has the in-flight literature such as in-flight magazine, air sickness bag and safety demo briefing card.
We're almost ready to go, expecting an on-time departure, taking off towards the northwest with a 10-10 setting course for Perth. Weather conditions en route, well, we've just come in from Perth and it was a smooth flight, so we're expecting the same on the way back, and the forecast weather around Perth itself is also fine this evening. I'll be doing the flying, I'll chat to you just before we descend with an update of both estimated time of arrival and the actual weather conditions for landing. In the meantime, I trust you enjoy the flight first today.
Now as we roll forward from stand, what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our taxi out to the runway in our absolutely spectacular sunset takeoff out over the absolutely staggering massive port of Port Hedland this evening. Then once firmly in there, well and truly on our way to Perth, we'll go over what you can expect on board on the QantasLink Airbus A320. Anyway, with the absolutely spectacular takeoff out of the way, as first order of business on tonight's service, let's have a look at the onboard entertainment on the A320. So the A320 is supposed to have the string-to-your-own device entertainment system equipped. Unfortunately, on today's service, it was not available and not working. Didn't work on my iPhone and didn't work on my MacBook computer either. So that only really leaves the in-flight magazine left, provided by Qantas. It's an okay read, got some good regional destination content. So yeah, that'll kill about 20 minutes of flight. So yeah, rather call out with a lack of entertainment today. Not only is the string to your own device not working, my own Amazon Prime Video downloads all of a sudden were expired after a certain period of inactivity. And to add insult to injury, most of my music downloads were also not playable offline due to changes in Amazon Prime Music. So for now, we'll just have to settle for those absolutely spectacular sunset views outside and get into tonight's on-board snack and drink service. So this evening we're offered only the one option, which I consider the semi-substantial sweet potato, spinach and goat's cheese quiche, which was okay, got the job done, but wasn't anything amazing either. Would have appreciated a little bit more selection in terms of the snacks. Being an evening service, there's also a full Qantas drink service, including alcoholic beverages, along with tea, coffee and soft drinks. This evening I'll go for a white wine, which is the De Bortoli Sauvignon Blanc. Probably less than $10 a bottle, but yeah, perfectly quaffable nonetheless. Being Easter Sunday, the crew also complimented the service with Lindor chocolates, which I thought was a nice finishing touch to today's onboard service. Aside from that, not too much more to report about tonight's flight at this point in time, other than that it's been a rather boring flight with no entertainment on what is a very average aircraft that is deployed on some of QantasLink's most expensive flights. I guess one saving grace tonight is at least I've got the whole row to myself, so it's a little bit more comfortable. As there's not really much more to do on this flight other than to count down the time to Perth, also asked for a beer as well. We got the Stone and Wood Pacific Ale. So quite a nice crafty beer, this one at 4.4%. It's pretty flavourful but also pretty sessionable at the same time. As the slow glowing sunset outside finally comes to be extinguished, the crew also come around with one final offering of bottled water, which I thought was a nice touch. Really do appreciate those mini bottles of water that Qantas serve. Anyway, before we start our descent into Perth, let's now have a look at one of the onboard lavatories on the A320. We will find one at the front of the aircraft and two at the rear. Very much our stock standard A320 narrow body lavatory, this one. Clean and tidy nonetheless, and got everything you need in terms of basic amenities such as running water, hand soap, baby change table, even a coat hook as well. Anyway, we're just about to reach the northern reaches of Perth's sprawling metropolitan area, so what better time now to sit back, relax and enjoy our nighttime arrival. And once on the ground, I'll give my final thoughts and verdict on tonight's QantasLink A320 regional experience.
ahead. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened until the seatbelt sign is off. As always, smoking, vaping and use of e-cigarettes is not permitted while disembarking or throughout the terminal. Call out. Before leaving, ensure you take your seat, please pocket any personal items. If you can reach or phone the out on flight mode, on behalf of all of us here at QantasLink, I'm well thank you for choosing to fly with us. If you're visiting Perth, we hope you enjoy your stay, and of course if we can, welcome home.
And just like that, welcome back to a pleasantly mild Perth, which is a refreshing change from the very warm and humid conditions that I experienced up in Port Hedland. But nonetheless, it was a great Easter weekend up in Port Hedland. I have visited Carafa before and elsewhere in the Pilbara, but first time visiting Port Hedland, so great to do a walking tour up there and get to see the absolutely massive port of Port Hedland. It was also a rather cost-effective trip as well, notwithstanding the cost of 2 nights accommodation. Both my flight up with Virgin Australia and my return on QantasLink are booked with points as classic rewards. So this flight was 12,000 points and $75 in taxes. So considering the cash price was over $600 one way, saved over $500 on this flight, and in total about $900 on the whole trip booking with points. Anyway, on to my final thoughts and verdict about this evening's QantasLink A320 experience. So let's start back at Port Hedland Airport, where I thought the whole check-in and bag drop process was pretty quick and easy. The same couldn't be said, however, about the security situation, which I thought was pretty unprofessional. It seemed like the staff were running late to open the checkpoint. And this resulted in a huge queue at security, which took a long time to process. And then that resulted in absolutely no time to enjoy the departures area, as boarding had already been called. Once on board, it wasn't one of QantasLink's best performances tonight in my opinion. Starting with the aircraft really is a subpar experience all over compared to their Boeing 737-800 on mainline Qantas. Despite Western Australian customers really paying a premium to fly QantasLink in Western Australia, these aircraft still very much are Jetstar aircraft. Nothing really has been changed to make it more premium experience. The same old cramped and rather uncomfortable 28-inch seating still brings that budget carrier vibe to QantasLink. No Wi-Fi, and the stream to your own device entertainment system did even work on this flight. Aside from that, the crew were friendly enough, but the in-flight snack wasn't anything amazing. Guess the saving grace was having the whole row to myself certainly made for a more comfortable experience. At least there's free drinks on Qantas, so that's always a good thing. So overall, a pretty unremarkable flight this evening. Guess I got it as a classic reward, so I only paid the $75 tax, so it's hard to complain. But yeah, if I had paid cash price over $600 for this flight, I think I'd be pretty disappointed in what I got. Anyway, from here at Perth Airports, Terminal 3 and Terminal 4, thanks so much for watching tonight's QantasLink flight review. Don't forget to like, hype, share and subscribe to the channel. But until next one, safe travels wherever that might take you.